Thank you for attending. The ODI squad for games 3 and 4, we've included 4 players who weren't in the previous squad. So Michael Clark, David Warner and Matthew Wade, as foreshadowed, coming back after having a break. And we've also included Moses Henriques as a pace bowling all-rounder. We think the conditions in Brisbane are likely to suit that type of player. And who we've left out, Brad Haddon. We've left out also Aaron Finch, Steve Smith and Usman Khawaja. And Ben Cutting is also out. We've gone from a squad of 13 to a squad of 12. So you'll have that team in front of you there. And I'll welcome your questions.
John, I guess the selection of Moses Henriques, was that sort of a reflection that the selection of Moses Henriques, is that sort of a sign that you thought you needed another seam bowling option among your all-rounders compared to sort of last night?
Yes, certainly. I mean, as I've stated right through the season and on many occasions, we need all-rounders. And we're really trying to groom Glenn Maxwell as an all-rounder, a spin bowling all-rounder, an obvious interest there for India. Mitchell Marsh was on the frame some time ago, but he's injured. Moses Henriques has been on the horizon for some years now, and this is his opportunity. And we really hope that he'll come on as a seam bowling all-rounder.
You selected him for the Australia A game over the summer. I think you also saw him at the WACA a few times. How have you rated his progress this season?
Well, I saw him bat at the WACA when he made 78 in the Ryobi Cup and then 78 in the Shield match, and he batted superbly. And then he went to Sydney and made 150 and 50 not out in the next game. And he also, when I saw him bowl in Perth, he bowled very well too. So he's got a lot of talent. And we hope that he performs, and we want consistent performance from him. But as I've said for some extended period, we need all-round players.
Brad Haddon, what's the severity of his hamstring injury, and has it ruled him out of contention for the tour of India?
Look, we don't know exactly. I mean, I saw Brad last night and again at the airport this morning. We're hoping it's not too serious. We hope it's like a couple of weeks and nothing more than that. And, you know, there is a real chance we'll take 2 wicket keepers to India and or to England. And as I've said before, we consider the 2 best keeper batsmen in the country are he and Matthew Wade.
If he's not available, who becomes next in line? Neville, Payne, those sorts of things?
We've got a lot of options there, and what the national selection panel will have to decide on that, we'll have to discuss that. But at the moment, those 2 are the 2 I've mentioned. But I think the wicket-keeping stocks in Australia at the moment are very good. Ludeman's doing very well for South Australia. Payne, obviously, is gaining confidence and coming back. Hanscom and Triffett are 2 very good young keeper batsmen. And of course, Peter Neville is a very good player too.
Sorry, you go.
Just looking forward to the rest of the one days. Do you expect Shane Watson to be part of any of those? Or?
Well, we'll just wait and see when Shane is fit to play, and then he'll come under consideration. But we're certainly hoping that he'll be fit, by the end of this month. But I just haven't had. In the last 3 or 4 days, I haven't heard just how he's progressing there.
Would the one days be where you would like to see him, or the Sheffield Shield?
Well, we'll have to see that. I mean, it might be a really good. We're really hoping that he'll be ready for the Sheffield Shield match, which I think starts on the 24th of January, and then we'll go from there. It'll be terrific if he's available, but I don't know yet whether he's likely or not.
Just back on Moses Henriques, do you think he's the kind of player, I mean, he's shown a lot of potential in the domestic form, do you think he's the kind of player that will elevate his game at the international level? Well,
we're certainly hoping so. And I mean, over the years, over history in any sport, some players play better at a higher level than the level down. And a lot of others play well at this level but not able to manage that. He'll certainly have the opportunity. And I think, one of the obvious things that we're doing is we have got an incredibly demanding schedule for the next 14 or 15 months, an incredibly demanding schedule, and that workload in terms of the players will need to be shared by, more than a squad of 13 or 14. And these young men who are getting opportunities, we really hope that they prosper and develop our depth. And I've stated 12 months ago that one of our real aims is to develop depth. And I think in recent months there's been some pleasing signs in that regard. But we need depth because there's a lot of cricket and the 3 different formats during the next, as I say, 13 or 14 months.
Aaron Finch, what did you make of his 2 one-days?
Look, Aaron Finch is a very good player, and we've seen him in the Ryobi and the T20. He's a fine player. I thought he looked in really good shape in Melbourne, and then he got out. So he's had 2 innings, and he didn't make big runs in either. But that doesn't change my mind or other people's mind much about him at all. He still remains. 3 or 4 days ago, he was a very good player, worthy of contention, and he still is. And I think we're very likely to see him back in the T20s. He's a very good and an exciting player, wonderful player.
You still dropped him though from the side, so.
Well, we rested David Warner, Michael Clarke, and Matthew Wade with a clear intention of bringing them back. So I don't think Aaron really expected to be retained after that, and Phil Hughes made 100. So I think it's all very obvious and clear, and was from the beginning.
What did you make of Brett Lee's comments about not knowing who the best side is and his?
He's not correct, because we do know. We know very clearly, so he's wide of the mark.
Just on Usman Khawaja and Steve Smith, was it always the plan to have them play?
Yes, it was, and as Mickey Arthur stated very clearly last night, and they understood that, and I had a word with each of them last night. And I think they were, I indicated to them that selecting them in the squad was a very clear signal from us that they are in contention, and we want them to improve, and we want them to have some opportunity, and we want them to be encouraged by us including them in the squad. And they seemed to be very pleased with the message and very pleased to have been included. And obviously saw with those players coming back, there was a good chance they were going to be squeezed out.
It does make it tough though, just one game for Usman.
I think they would prefer one game to no games. And they received a very clear message. And it's not only playing the game, but being in the squad, in the Australian squad for 4 or 5 days, and the intensity of training and being there with Mickey Arthur and the other support staff, it's a very good experience for them. And, let me just go back, say to Jackson Bird. Now, if he makes the tour, the Ashes tour, and he's obviously in strong contention for that, and he doesn't play in the first couple of tests, and then the 3rd test comes up and there might be an injury and he's in contention and he plays. Are we better off for him having the experience in Melbourne and Sydney, or playing his first test there in an Ashes series not having had that experience? And he's been in the squad. I think he's benefited greatly from the 10 days he had with the squad and the 2 test matches.
Just going back,
and that's part of the overall strategy. Sorry.
You're right. Just going back to Hughes Finch. So Hughes, was that always the plan to keep him in the squad, or is it the simple fact that he made a ton and Finch didn't?
Well, it was. Philip Hughes is much more in our plans in terms of India and the Ashes and that sort of thing. So we're very keen to have him in the environment and, get him progressing, better that way. So that was, I would say, Phil Hughes was always ahead of Aaron Finch in that sense.
I guess, John, internationally, we've seen probably glimpses of what Glenn Maxwell can do with the bat. With the ball, probably not yet, and hasn't even bowled a lot. Are you sort of hoping for the rest of the one-day series that, assuming it fits in with Michael's plans game to game, that he might actually bowl a bit more? Yeah, look, we're hoping he will, and I think Glenn's bowling has certainly improved from the time of Australia A, and he got into the fold a bit there, and it was explained very clearly to him that one of the aspects of bowling finger spin, it's different if you're a Muralitharan or a Shane Warne, but if you're bowling just steady spin, you need to be very patient and very accurate and try and build up pressure and, in a sense, be bowling when batsmen get out, because he's a very exuberant, enthusiastic person and patience is not usually to the fore.
And I think he's learnt that very well. He bowled very well in that game. He bowled well in Shield games. And when he's getting an opportunity, he's showing signs of improving. He's not a frontline spinner. He's a batsman who bowls. And as I've said, many times, we are looking for batsmen who can bowl decently. I mean, Dilshan with the Sri Lankan side, opening batsman, and he bowls very decent off spinners. You need your 4 bowlers, and you need some of your batsmen who can give you some decent overs. And that's how we're really trying to develop Glenn Maxwell, and he's got a lot of talent.
And James Pattinson made his club return on the weekend.
Yes.
How do you handle him the rest? Do you sort of say, bring him back to the ODIs, or do you say you
Well,
want him playing Shield because you want him to make a late bid for the India tour?
Yeah, look, that's, very much in our discussion, and hopefully, it could well be that he plays some ODIs and some Shield cricket, because the intention at this stage is obviously, strongly in contention for the Indian tour. And I think he did well on the weekend too.
Yesterday's loss, how do you describe it, and do selectors need to be held accountable for it?
Well, firstly, I'd say congratulations to Sri Lanka. I thought they played very well, and they've got a very good one-day record, and they played very well here in Australia last year. And we beat them in the third of 3 finals, so they're a good side. They won a good toss yesterday. The conditions, they used the conditions, the covers have been on for 4 or 5 hours. It rained in Adelaide until about 1 o'clock, I think it was. And they bowled very well, and our batsmen, they were just nibbling it around, and their bowlers don't have a lot of pace, and they used the conditions very well, and our batsmen really struggled. And all credit to the Sri Lankan bowlers. We didn't play well. We hope we come back better next time.
It was a second string side as well.
We had the obvious thing is people need a break. Journalists, my guess is you have a week or 2 off sometime. Everybody in the community virtually has a break. Michael Clarke, David Warner, Matthew Wade needed a break, and they had a break, just as Adam Gilchrist and others used to in past seasons. It's a pretty obvious thing. They had a break. That created an opportunity for some others. They were superb here at Melbourne. It didn't go well in Adelaide. And we'll see how we go in Brisbane, and we'll be very determined to do well.
Would you break 3 of your top people at once, though? Most industries wouldn't do that.
What do you mean, break 3 of your top?
Well, you wouldn't allow, for example, 3 journalists who are your senior journalists to go on holidays all at the same time.
Well, it was the appropriate time to do it for all of those 3. We're concerned with informed player management, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we're doing in all circumstances. It's just sensible, common sense player management.
You mentioned the moving ball. I mean, very similar conditions of what the Aussies will face in England, especially
Yes.
what they
Yeah.
were yesterday. So,
Yeah.
I mean, is that a real issue? It's been seemingly an issue with the top 6 facing the moving ball.
Yeah,
in the
look, the moving ball like that, I mean, Australian players are less used to it than England players. And in that ODI series in England, we were caught batting first on wickets that they took the covers off just as play started, and England bowled very well, and it was very difficult. More difficult than it actually was the other night in Adelaide. But we just as always, we need to do as well as we possibly can. And when we bowl a really good line and length and exploit those conditions.
Just with the rotations and the constant fast.
Do you mean, I presume you mean informed player management? Is that what you mean or not? Is that what you meant or not?
Well, I try to keep it short for our readers.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what you meant.
That's
Thanks.
the topic we're discussing here. Just with Siddle and Hilfenhaus, for example,
Yeah.
they were rested in Perth, and then Mickey revealed a few days later that they both had niggling injuries. Stark was rested in Melbourne, and then Mickey revealed last night he's got ankle problems,
Yeah.
which he's playing in pain.
Yeah.
You know, I guess there's 2 ways of looking at it. You know, it's great that people are taking interest in cricket, but it also means not all opinions are informed and people are throwing.
Yeah, look, that's
things
a
back.
question of just how far you inform. I mean, you know, with
I mean,
Mitchell
my
Stark, I
question
mean,
is-
what Mickey said last night was absolutely true. You know, and there's pain in the ankle and bowling workloads. So it was a pretty clear-cut decision that it wasn't in the interests of Mitchell Starc or Australian cricket for him to play in that game. And Peter Siddle, after the Adelaide game, A, was exhausted, and B, had a really tight hamstring. If he had played, it was unlikely that he'd have got through the game. It was the sensible, it was the right decision.
Well, what I'm saying is some of this info comes out a few days later, and in the interim, you guys are getting bagged without people knowing the full knowledge.
We're pretty resilient.
So does that lead to some revision of how these things are handled, I guess, in the
Well, it's just a matter of, I mean, I don't think it's in the interests of the player to reveal every little niggle. I don't. You know, I mean, players basically don't want to be seen as sort of vulnerable or physically suspect, and we respect that. And I think that's the right decision. So we won't always say that he's got a bit of a bad knee, because more that can be made of it, and it's awkward for the player. And we'd rather take the heat than the players.
Having said all of that,
Yeah.
there are so many injuries at the moment and so many
No,
changes.
there have been so many
that-
injuries over the years, and I think two factors that need to be understood very clearly is that the level, the three different formats and the amount of cricket and the amount of travel is very different from the past. And the other key factor that's not often mentioned is the lack of proper conditioning periods. I mean, AFL footballers have a 4 or 5 month period in which they have a very carefully programmed conditioning period. Now, the cricketers at the moment, it's very difficult to find a time slot, an extended time slot, when they can undergo appropriate conditioning. Now, that has various outcomes, and I think you see it in various, in obvious ways.
Last question, James.
John, what did you make of Kane Richardson's performance yesterday, and what's been the message to him following that game?
Well, look, he, to be frank, on the we expected Mitchell Johnson to be able to play, but his left side, his right hand side, his leading side just wasn't right. We considered it was a risk not worth taking, so we played him. I mean, he's a really promising young player. He's got some pace, and he's done very well in some Ryobi Cup games, and especially in the T20. It was disappointing that last night he was ruled out for running on the pitch, but the 6 overs he bowled, he looked good. He's a really promising young cricketer.
Just quickly, Glenn Maxwell and McKay and Hussey not available for the BBL semi-finals?
No, that's been signalled for a long time. And the scheduling for both the ODIs and the Big Bash League was out for a long time, and I think most pundits would have predicted that David Hussey, Mackay, Wade and Maxwell were very likely to be in the ODI side.
So Finch goes straight back in then to the Renegades?
Yes,
Yeah.
presumably, yeah. He's not in this squad.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the squad assembles in Brisbane on Tuesday.
And just with Johnson, sorry, this isn't really a question,
Yeah.
just checking
Yeah.
the facts. Is Johnson and Starc, they're both fine?
Well, we anticipate they will be. I mean, the medical staff said that it is very likely they'll be fit, and we'll test them on. We'll monitor them over the next couple of days, and they'll assemble on Tuesday, and we'll make a full assessment on Wednesday. And if either of them don't, if there's any doubt, we'll bring other players into the squad. But we anticipate they'll be okay.